10 famous writers who were hypocritical. We often look to writers as guides, holding them up as voices of reason, justice, or vision. These are the minds behind some of the world's most beloved books, the creators of stories and philosophies that shape entire generations. But what happens when the authors of these ideas fall short of living by them? Today, we're taking a closer look at 10 famous writers who, for all their brilliant insights and profound ideas, didn't always practice what they preached. From double standards on morality to personal lives at odds with their works, these authors prove that even our most cherished voices can have unexpected contradictions. Number 10. Christopher Hitchens was pro-life. Christopher Hitchens was one of the most outspoken atheists and critics of religion of his time. Known for works like God is Not Great, Hitch 22, and The Portable Atheist, Hitchens often took aim at religious beliefs, challenging their role in moral and political debates. But while he was an ardent supporter of secularism, Hitchens held a surprising stance on the issue of abortion. In a 1988 interview with Crisis magazine, Hitchens expressed discomfort with what he described as the disposability of the fetus, suggesting that the potential for life, even within the womb, makes abortion a complex moral issue. Hitchens explained, "I had a queasy feeling about the disposability of the fetus. This queasy feeling has not gone away. Once you allow that the occupant of the womb is even potentially a life, it cuts athwart any glib invocation of the woman's right to choose." His reservations on abortion contradicted the pro-choice position commonly associated with secular and atheist movements, surprising many of his followers who believed he would champion a woman's right to choose. This contradiction shows that even the most vocal critics of religious morality can have unexpected views on sensitive ethical issues. Hitchens' nuanced stance reminds us that people and their beliefs are often more complex than they first appear. Number 9. J.R.R. Tolkien supported a ruthless dictator. J.R.R. Tolkien, the beloved author of The Lord of the Rings, created a world that has inspired generations, taught us lessons on unity, and depicted the timeless struggle between good and evil. His stories have fostered entire subcultures, and the films by Peter Jackson continue to captivate audiences around the world. But while The Lord of the Rings is often celebrated as a tale of tolerance and resistance against oppression, Tolkien's personal views held some unexpected contradictions. In letter 83 to his son, Christopher, Tolkien expressed admiration for Francisco Franco, the Spanish dictator who led the nationalist forces in the Spanish Civil War. Tolkien believed Franco was fighting against what he saw as red propaganda targeting the Catholic Church. The Spanish Civil War was a complex conflict between left-wing Republicans, an alliance of socialists, communists, anarchists, and others, and the right-wing nationalists led by Franco. In Tolkien's eyes, Franco was defending traditional values, including Catholicism, against an ideological threat. While this stance doesn't necessarily make Tolkien a fascist, it is surprising for an author who wrote so passionately about peace and unity. Tolkien's views on Franco remind us that even the most celebrated writers can hold perspectives that seem to clash with the values in their works. Like many others, Tolkien was a product of his time, shaped by the cultural and political struggles that defined his era. Number 8. George Orwell criticized government and censorship but sold out fellow writers. George Orwell, celebrated for his fierce critiques of authoritarianism in 1984 and Animal Farm, gave us the vocabulary to recognize the tools of oppression and censorship. His works have inspired readers to question government power and resist the encroachment of surveillance and control. However, Orwell himself didn't always live up to these ideals. In 1949, Orwell compiled what has since become known as Orwell's List, a list of 38 writers, journalists, and public figures he suspected of being secret communists or Stalin sympathizers. Among the names were friends and colleagues he had once trusted. Orwell handed this list to the UK government, who at the time were conducting their own investigations into communist influence. When this list was made public in 1996 by the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, it shocked many fans who admired Orwell's dedication to free expression and his resistance to government control. This revelation highlights the tension between Orwell's public ideals and his private actions. He believed he was protecting his country from a perceived threat, yet in doing so, he compromised some of the principles he so passionately defended. Orwell's list serves as a reminder that even the most vocal champions of freedom can find themselves caught in the same contradictions they once condemned. Number 7. Ayn Rand accepted Social Security. Ayn Rand, the controversial philosopher behind objectivism, preached the virtues of radical individualism and a laissez-faire economy. Her books, Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, laid out her vision of a world where government intervention was virtually non-existent, and individuals achieved greatness through self-reliance. She frequently spoke against government programs like Social Security, which she saw as a form of forced dependency. However, later in life, Rand found herself signing up for the very program she had criticized so harshly. Despite having spent years decrying Social Security as a violation of individual freedom, she accepted government benefits, justifying it by saying she had paid into the system and was simply reclaiming what was hers. Yet, as her critics pointed out, Social Security is funded by all taxpayers, meaning she was relying in part on the very collective support she'd railed against. This apparent hypocrisy reveals a surprising complexity in Rand's staunch philosophy of objectivism. Even she couldn't entirely escape the safety net of government support, showing that sometimes even the most passionate advocates of independence have to lean on others. Rand's story serves as a reminder that life's realities can often challenge our most deeply held beliefs. Number 6. Henry David Thoreau preached the simple while living a complicated one. Henry David Thoreau, born in 1817, has inspired generations with his essays and poems on nature, philosophy, and the simple life. His most famous work, Walden, is a tribute to the idea of living deliberately, finding meaning in nature, and rejecting the complexities of industrialized society. Many of us learned about Thoreau's call for simplicity and self-reliance in school, imagining him as a solitary figure, living off the land. Yet Thoreau's personal life was far more complex than his writings suggest. He relied heavily on the generosity of others, accepting food, financial support, and other assistance from friends and family. Though he railed against society's conventions, he often enjoyed its comforts and conveniences. Some critics argue that Walden was more about virtue signaling his romanticized ideals than it was a model he truly lived by. In truth, Thoreau's life was a blend of independence and dependence, simplicity and complexity. His story reminds us that even those who champion a life of purpose and minimalism can struggle to fully embody these values. Thoreau's experience shows us that ideals, however noble, can be challenging to live out in their entirety, especially in a society that makes it easy to rely on the help of others. Number 5. John Locke advocated for individual freedom, but supported slavery. John Locke, often hailed as the father of liberalism, was a towering figure of the Enlightenment, influencing ideas about government, education, and individual rights. His 2 treatises of government laid out a vision for a society built on natural rights and government by consent, a powerful argument against the divine right of kings. Locke's work has been foundational for modern democracy and is often celebrated by advocates of human rights. But while Locke championed freedom and individual rights in theory, his personal actions tell a different story. Locke held investments in pro-slavery ventures, including the Royal African Company, which was directly involved in the Atlantic slave trade. He even argued that making prisoners of war into slaves was morally justifiable, a stance that runs counter to the ideals of freedom he espoused in his writings. Though Locke's views on slavery were not unusual for his time, they highlight a troubling inconsistency between his public philosophy and his private actions. Locke's legacy remains influential, yet this contradiction complicates our understanding of him as a champion of liberty. It serves as a reminder that even those who lay the foundations for freedom can be shaped by the prejudices and economic interests of their era, revealing the complexities that lie behind even the most revered philosophies. Number 4. Jean-Jacques Rousseau championed good parenting but abandoned his kids. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, one of the most influential thinkers of the Enlightenment, wrote passionately about the ideals of society and education. His work, The Social Contract, calls for a society built on mutual respect and cooperation. In Emile, or On Education, he outlined an approach to raising children that emphasized care, guidance, and understanding. Rousseau's writings on education and childhood have inspired countless educators, and he is often celebrated for his focus on children's well-being. Yet Rousseau's own actions as a father starkly contradicted his teachings. Despite having 5 children with his partner Thérèse Levasseur, he and Levasseur sent each of them to orphanages shortly after they were born. Rousseau never raised or supported his children, leaving them to lives of neglect and hardship. This hypocrisy did not go unnoticed. Rousseau's contemporary and rival, Voltaire, harshly criticized him for his abandonment of his family in a letter, calling into question Rousseau's commitment to the principles he preached. This troubling inconsistency reminds us that even the most celebrated philosophers can struggle to live up to their own ideals. Rousseau's story serves as a reminder that personal flaws and failings often lie behind the philosophies that inspire us, adding layers of complexity to the lives of those we admire. Number 3, beloved children's author, Enid Blyton, was an abusive mother. Enid Blyton, one of the world's best-loved children's authors, created some of the most enduring stories of adventure and friendship. Her series, like The Famous Five, Naughty, and The Secret Seven, captivated young readers and established Blyton as a giant in children's literature. Her books, cherished by millions, fostered a sense of wonder and curiosity, and they continue to be read across generations. But Blyton's personal life tells a different story, one that sharply contrasts with the warmth and charm of her tales. Blyton had 2 daughters, Gillian and Imogen, with her husband, Major Hugh Alexander Pollock. But as her daughter Imogen later revealed in her autobiography, A Childhood at Green Hedges, Blyton was often neglectful and at times cruel. She spent long hours writing and left her daughters primarily in the care of nannies. According to Imogen, Blyton frequently criticized and berated them, even for minor transgressions. For a writer whose stories brought joy to countless children, Blyton's harsh treatment of her own reveals a deeply troubling contradiction. Blyton's life reminds us that the personas we create in our public work don't always match the realities of our personal lives. Her story serves as a reminder that even the creators of the most beloved tales may not embody the values their stories convey, proving that the old adage, "never meet your idols," may sometimes hold true. Number 2, Virginia Woolf was a feminist and anti-Semitic. Virginia Woolf is a towering figure in literary history, known for works like Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, and A Room of One's Own. Her stream of consciousness writing and focus on female independence have cemented her legacy as a feminist icon. Woolf's exploration of mental health and her own struggles with depression have also made her a symbol of resilience, inspiring readers to engage deeply with the inner lives of her characters. Her works continue to influence literary studies and feminist thought, standing alongside those of T.S. Eliot and James Joyce. Yet, Woolf's personal beliefs reveal a troubling contradiction. Despite being married to Leonard Woolf, who was Jewish, she often made anti-Semitic remarks, even directing them at her husband. In letters, she referred to Jewish friends in offensive terms, once describing someone as an ugly, dirty Jew. Such comments are jarring, especially from a writer who championed equality and social justice in her work. Woolf's anti-Semitism complicates her legacy, showing that even those we admire for their progressive values can harbor biases that clash with the ideals they promote. Virginia Woolf's story reminds us that the legacy of even the most influential thinkers can be shaped by the prejudices of their time. It's a reminder that we can still celebrate the impact of their work while acknowledging and grappling with the complexities of who they were as people. Number 1, Flannery O'Connor was an anti-racist who said racist things. Flannery O'Connor, a monumental figure in Southern Gothic literature, used her works to explore the dark complexities of the American South. Stories like A Good Man is Hard to Find, The Violent Bear It Away, and Wise Blood often depicted the South's racial tensions, criticizing how white Southerners treated black people. Though O'Connor confronted racism in her fiction, her personal views were more complicated. While she voiced support for integration in theory, she also referred to herself as a segregationist by taste and used racial slurs in letters to friends. She even suggested that black people were better off under Jim Crow. O'Connor's views were shaped by the culture in which she lived, reflecting the deep-seated prejudices of her time. She remains a complex figure, one who saw the ugliness of racism in her society, but in many ways still held on to the beliefs of her upbringing. Her story challenges us to reconcile her powerful critiques of the South with the contradictions that marked her own perspective. These writers remind us that no one, not even our heroes, is perfect. They left behind works that continue to challenge and inspire us, yet they were also flawed people, shaped by their times and human limitations. So, as we celebrate their words, let's also remember their complexities. If you enjoyed this exploration of literary icons and the contradictions that define them, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Next Chapter Audio. Join us next time as we uncover more stories and dive into the lives behind the words.